a humanitarian tragedy. Wada, I would like to start with you, and I would like to ask if is really the Western media giving the full picture of these conflicts?
Thank you, Rafael. I think the Western media is under the influence of one-sided narrative, which is the Israeli narrative. And this is not something new regarding the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Simply, we have witnessed that the Western centers of power in general have given Israel impunity during the last few decades, actually. And therefore, media, which in my opinion, to a large extent, is following the centers of power in the Western world, has also adopted the same perspective. For example, at this stage, when the event started on the 7th of October, as you said, the media is using the complexity of the situation to devoid the narrative from its context, from its history, from the past of it, from simple facts like the fact that Gaza is under occupation. Gaza has been under blockade for at least 16, 17 years. The fact that the Oslo Agreement, which was signed 30 years ago, was not implemented. The Israelis have never really done what they have promised. We're supposed to be celebrating this year the 25th anniversary of the Palestinian state. That has not happened. The deadlock of the peace process, actually the utility of the peace process in order to continue the occupation and the suppression of the Palestinian issue, the evolution of occupation into full-fledged apartheid state in Palestine, the right-wing government that has invaded al-Masjid al-Aqsa, converted the status of the mosque, which has been well established during the last few decades, and also at the same time, the settlements that have been invading the West Bank, and the settlers who have become very aggressive in attacking the Palestinians. All that narrative was not given. So the issue is as if we have peace and tranquility, and suddenly some crazy people decided to shatter that peace by killing and slaughtering kids. And therefore, you know, this is how it is. In fact, the media is guilty also of not only leaving the context of the conflict out from the narrative, but also repeating falsified information about what happened, and repeating statements that without trying to confirm it from any other independent sources. Of course, we know there is a toolbox of the statements that people normally use in this kind of case, and we have seen this, including repeating statements about, for example, the white phosphorus, where Gaza has been bombarded with, and the White House would say, no, we did not have that authenticated from an independent source. Although we know previous wars, you know, independent sources did confirm that. And we know that today Amnesty International did declare that it was used. Beside the fact of ignoring Gaza, I was really amused by a response of an American presidential candidate to a journalist. The journalist said, we see the killing of civilians in Gaza. We have witnessed on Al Jazeera the killing of so many children and so on. You know what his answer was? Don't watch Al Jazeera. Simple. So if you don't watch what is happening in Gaza, Gaza does not exist. The fact that we have at least 400 child being murdered during the last week, it doesn't matter if you don't watch it. You know, the fact that hospitals have been attacked, the fact that 30 ambulances have been destroyed during the last few days, the fact that the demand of Palestinians to evacuate from the half of Gaza, basically 1 million, the conspiracy to take them out of Gaza into Sinai, all of that, you know, it could fit within one narrative. Israel is defending itself. So this beautiful term, Israel has the right to defend itself, could cover up on every atrocity. In fact, the president of Israel today, Herzog, or yesterday, he said something also very interesting, which in my opinion, in every legal framework, he should be held accountable for it. He said that the people, the ordinary people of Gaza, are responsible because since they did not revolt against Hamas, they deserve to be treated as they are treated. So basically, he is justifying a genocide for the public civilians in Gaza. And this is unbelievable. You know, in the lexicon of war, this amounts to a full-fledged, justification of genocide. And this, in my opinion, the world should notice it. But as I said, media until now is trying hard to maintain the Israeli narrative. Although the last 2 days, I can witness some cracks in the narrative because I see the response in the streets of London, many other capitals in the world, and of course, the immense popular demonstrations in the Arab world have sent a message that actually the masses are not duped by this kind of propaganda, and therefore more balance is needed in order to cover this system. Thank you.
Perhaps now, Arlene, please. Thank you, Wada. Arlene, following what Wada just said about the coverage of these events, you as historian, could you help us to understand the main historical elements that led to this conflict between Palestine and Israel? Arlene, just 1 second, you are unmuted. Yes.
Okay, so well, first of all, thank you, Rafa and to CAF for hosting this event and for the opportunity to talking to all of you. Well, yes, well, there's the immediate context, which I will come back to in briefly, because I think it's really important not to forget the framework this is happening in, and which has been forgotten very much, as Wada has said. We're talking about a decades-long struggle for liberation. So this is happening inside the framework of a struggle for liberation and a century-long struggle for national emancipation that has been impeded, well, initially by the lines between British imperialism and Zionist settler colonialism, following then during the Cold War, growing US and even unconditional US support to state the point in which we are now. So this is the large framework that should never be forgotten if we want to understand what's happening. And then there's the more recent context, which has already been treated here. But, just to remember, we're talking about the failure of the Oslo peace process to deliver a state, the maintenance of occupation with everything that this means, with the growing number of settlers inside the West Bank, and then finally the complete closure of the Gaza Strip, turning it into not only an open-air prison, as it's been called, but actually a ghetto. We're talking about a 21st century, huge 2.3 million people ghetto. And this following, a process that was of legitimate legislative council elections that was boycotted by the international community, by the powerful countries, European countries, Israel. They did not accept the outcome of this election, therefore leading to a boycott that ended up with a split in, just to wrap up the subject, a split inside the Palestinian government. And finally, a policy of systematically led by Netanyahu to actually keep this split, never allow the government to reunite and to go back into a democratic process of legitimate representations, elections, and so on, as a means of not having someone to negotiate with, not having a partner for peace, and justifying the maintenance of this situation of the status quo. So the status quo that would allow Israeli expansionism to go on, and then the more immediate elements of what we're talking about. The immediate elements are very much linked to what happened this year. So the normalization process is reaching Saudi Arabia, which is crucial, and which would be quite a big step after normalization with United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Sudan, and Morocco, and so forth. So this is an important aspect, probably, of